Thank you, Amaya. You just reminded me of the best part of going to church with my grandmother at a Christian Reformed church, where if you didn't sit quietly before the service, my grandmother would pinch you. If you were a little kid, you'd go, "Ow!" And then she'd say, "Shh, I told you to be quiet." And she'd pinch you again. "Ow!" The only way to be safe was to volunteer to go in the back and ring the bell to start the service. "Can I go help ring the bell?" Grandma's like, "Yeah, get out of here." And I'd go back and we'd ring the bell and rang it just with as much force and delight as you did. Thank you, Amaya. Excuse me, that was a little bit of a story. But today we are looking at stories, and I welcome you to CVUUS. We start almost every week with a story about the land that we gather on, which is Nadakana, known as Nadakana by the Nulhegan tribe of the Western Abenaki. And the story of this land doesn't start with early explorers landing here or colonizers or Dutch settlers ending up in New Amsterdam. It starts with the Dawn people, the Abenaki. And I last year read the Voice of the Dawn, the autobiography of the Abenaki Nation, and chapter 2 is on hunting woolly mammoths and the boundaries of the white bear and why fighting a saber-toothed tiger is a fair fight, because you have a 50-50 chance of winning. These were the stories, the oral history of the Abenaki, because this was their land for over 10,000 years. It is a different story than we usually tell in schools. I like that we start our story with them. Other stories. Hey, where's Abby Sessions? You're not Abby Sessions. You, definitely not Abby Sessions. I thought Abby Sessions was supposed to be here to help lead the service. I am Liam Battjes-Greenwood. Sorry for disappointing you. Abby stayed home with Bill because they tested positive for needing to stay home. That's the story. We have a great storyteller here with us as our guest speaker. That Katrina Jutzi is, she has studied playwriting at Benetton College, where she fell in love with this Green Mountain State. Her husband runs Little Sister Farm, a vegetable farm that sells at the Rutland Farmers Market. She has published plays, poems, and essays. She hangs out at the UU Church in Rutland to collect their stories and twist them into topics of the afterlife and the supernatural. You will just love her. She has also collects stories probably from her 3 children, who have 3 very amazing personalities and are a joy to talk to. As we go through this service of stories, I want to remind you that here at CVUUS, your story is important. The story of your life is at home here. This is not a place where we enforce one particular story, but we enjoy this whole library of stories. So please, know that you can share your story on different colored cards. You can share a very sensitive one on a pink card if you have something that has happened in your life that you'd like some care. If there have been changes in your life, such as saying goodbye to a beloved furry critter at your home, you can write that on a yellow card because that's an important part of your story, and then put it in the offering plate, and we can share milestones and passages during our time of, what do we call it? Milestones and passages. Also, if you're new to CVUUS, fill out a little blue card if you'd like us to share your contact information, or have your contact information and share with you what's happening here. I'm supposed to ask you to put some things into worship mode. So you know how to put the cards into worship mode, put your phones into worship mode. I'm asked to remind you how to put your feet into worship mode. Your feet are your feet. Love them. Glad that they brought you here. If you could stomp on them when you get the snow off and the ice off in there and do a little dance down the aisle, that's fine. That's one way to get your feet ready. If you want to switch shoes, you can switch shoes and leave your feet at leave your shoes in the boot tray. If you want to go stocking feet, you can do that. Whatever you feel comfortable with, but that's what it means to put your feet into worship mode. And now, if you will join me in our chalice lighting? No, song. Come, come, whoever you are. Of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again.
Thank you, Liam. Isn't he great? I'm reading a poem here called Bolero by Keith Leonard. From the kitchen, I catch the neighbor, cross the street to switch off my car's interior lights. He returns to his house without announcing the favor. For the last 3 years, a friend has woken early and walked the beach, combing for bottle caps and frayed fishing line. She mentions this only casually at lunch, after I've asked what she did that morning. Care has a quiet soundtrack, the sycamore's rustling leaves, your nails tracing my shoulder blades, a melody that repeats, a bit like Ravel's Bolero. When first performed, a woman shouted rubbish from the balcony. She called Ravel a madman. I think I understand. I wish I didn't. I've been taught that art must have conflict, that reason must meet resistance. And now another song, Dark of Winter. Right? Oh, never mind. Okay.
Would you read with me?
Yes. May this flame we light remind us that every one of us, each with our own story, can bring the light of love to the world.
Please listen to the melody of this song and then join us in singing, and stand if you are able. Thank you. And thank you, Kate. You invited us into the deep spirit of that story and that song. Thank you. Julia Santerre has the intimidating privilege of following in the shoes of Poppy Reese. Nah, she's got her own shoes, silly. So, Julia, if you would come up and share our time for all ages.
Karina, I'm going to do this. Karina is going to help me this morning too. But first, I just want to say good morning. Good morning. I am Julia, and many of you may know me from volunteering in RE or being mom to Kiara, Tyrion, Gwendolyn, and Griffin. Got two of them over here today. And I am now your new acting Religious Exploration Coordinator. That is my title. Thank you. So one thing that you may not know about me is that I love children's books. I have quite a collection. And so I am, of course, going to do our Time for All Ages today by reading a book. And it's in two parts. So I'm going to read part 1, and Karina is going to help me with part 2. And Liam helped do some amazing animations, so you can see them on the screen. This is A Tale of Two Beasts by Fiona Robertson. It's kind of a big book, so. Part 1, The Strange Beast. I was walking home from Grandma's house through the deep, dark woods when I spied a strange little beast. He was stuck up in a tree and whining sadly. So I decided to rescue him. Veep, he says. I will call you Fang, I told him, and I wrapped him warmly in my scarf and carried him safely home. I gave him a lovely bath and a gorgeous new hat and sweater and a delicious bowl of fresh nuts. I made him a beautiful house and gave him Lord Rex to play with. I took him out for lots of long walkies to keep him fit and healthy. And I showed him off to all of my friends who loved him nearly as much as I did. But for some strange reason, the little beast did not look very happy. In fact, he was looking rather hot. I hope he's not sick, I thought, and opened the window to cool him down. But then something terrible happened. He threw off his clothes, leapt out the window, and ran away as fast as he could. Oh, back to the deep, dark woods. I wanted to go and look for him, but Mama had other plans. Dinner time, bath time, bedtime. I couldn't sleep. I missed the little beast, and I wondered if I would ever see him again. But then, a small furry shadow appeared at the foot of my bed. The strange little beast had returned. He seemed quite pleased to see me, and I began to think that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't that strange after all. I wonder why he came back.
A Tale of Two Beasts, Part 2. I was hanging from my favorite tree, singing happily to the birds, when I was ambushed by a terrible beast. She growled at me and tied me up and carried me off to her secret lair. She made me disgustingly clean and dressed me up in a ridiculous hat and sweater and tried to make me eat squirrel food. She kept me in a tiny box with nothing for me to do and nowhere for me to hang from. She made me walk backwards and forwards and backwards again for no reason whatsoever. She showed me off to a herd of even wilder beasts who were just as terrible as she was. I had had enough. I made a cunning plan and put it straight into action. Free once more. I raced back to the deep, dark woods before the terrible beast could catch me. It was peaceful in the deep, dark woods. A bit too peaceful, perhaps, and also a bit wet. In weather like this, one could do with a nice warm hat. I snuck back to retrieve it under cover of darkness. But the terrible beast was waiting for me. She seemed quite pleased to see me, and I began to think that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't that terrible after all.
Thank you so much for helping me with that, Karina. I wonder what stories in your lives could use a change of perspective. And speaking of perspective changes, kids are really, really good at changing perspectives and seeing other perspectives. And so I would be remiss, as your new acting RE coordinator, if I didn't invite you to help out in RE and hang out with our children. So we always need volunteers. It does not have to be a lot of work. It can just be volunteering on one Sunday and hanging out. And in particular, I want to say that we have a need for volunteers to hang out with our middle youth group, I should say. So we are currently have 3 years old through 8th grade in one group, and I would really love if our 6th through 8th graders could get, at least one day a month when they get their own special thing. And so again, it doesn't need to be a lot of work, just showing up and hanging out with a really cool group of kids. So I invite you to think about that as something you may want to do. I'm also looking at the people online. Hi. And with that, I will invite you to stand and sing the RE Leaders and Kids Out.
I'm going to apologize for the beginning of the service that I got a little bit out of order. I often do things a little bit out of order. Got me in trouble with my mom too. Okay, but we're on order now. Pathways of connection. Last Sunday, one of our pastors, Christina Solieri, invited us to see ourselves as co-creators. So I have two announcements about how we are co-creators. First, my quirky but loving husband, Mike Greenwood, just thinks that church programming doesn't need a leader. We can co-create community and co-create things that we can do together. He loves our Thanksgiving tradition of gathering for food and then having games. He loved our Radical Love event last week or 2 weeks ago, in which we played games and people brought food and we had so much fun. He's like, we need to do that more often. Yeah, but who's going to organize it? Well, let's co-create it. So, if you'd like to be part of a monthly game night, family time, friends time, it's food, fun, and friends, once a month, third Friday of the month. Let Mike and I know if you'd like to be on the mailing list. This Friday, it's going to be pasta and whatever else you bring. And there'll be games there, and there'll be laughter, and there'll be a lot of fun because you will be co-creating that. So let us know. We have some people already signed up to join us, and we can do this together. We don't have to wait for Paul up front to organize it, because he's got other things going on. Other things that we're co-creating. Worship is a co-creation, and Abby wanted to spend some time and honor all the people who make our Sunday gatherings possible. I will try to do this in, I think, 2 breaths. Amazing guest speakers such as Irina, Jutzi, worship associates, Abby Sessions or Liam filling in, Kate Gridley on the piano, Time for All Ages with Julia Santerre or Katrina leading also, Rebecca Strum and Irina Morgan, and Margy Levine and Dorothy Mammon and others, Richard Hopkins back in the tech team, and also Bob House providing comfort and taking care of the place. Bob House and Ellen Moore shoveling the sidewalks and getting those ready. Mary Conlon, Marnie Wood, Mike Greenwood ushering and greeting. Marnie Wood and Alice Burningshausen doing the floral decor, and social hour setup by Alan Moore, Miles Petrelli, and Kimberly Gray, and the amazing Steve Butterfield, the man behind the curtain who keeps the Zoom community connected. That's just for today. If you want to be part of this team of co-creators, talk to somebody that I mentioned. You could be part of the tech team or a worship associate, and one that maybe is better at following the order of service. Okay. Next thing, our offering. Our offering today, we will be sharing the plate with the NAACP of the Rutland branch. And the Rutland branch extends in support to 3 different counties: Rutland County, Addison County, and what's the other one? Bennington County. Thank you. Most recently, if you go onto their blog post, they mention Addison and supporting the Addison concern about the possible banning of books. And I was at the board meeting, the school board meeting, in which there was a discussion on whether certain books should be banned from our elementary school libraries, ones that affirm different body types, different genders, different makeups of different families. And there were 8 members of the CVUUS community there speaking at the board meeting. There were 12 or more people of the community, and the NAACP provided a statement. And it was just so supportive to hear their very articulate way of affirming diversity. And so I'm going to read the first couple sentences that they brought to that meeting. The NAACP strongly condemns any attempt to ban books, as it undermines students' fundamental right to access diverse perspectives. Throughout history, book bans have been used to silence marginalized voices, restrict freedom, and control the narratives, control the stories we tell surrounding race, identity, and history. Yeah. And so many other people in that room said, yeah, that's important. And the school board and the superintendent set out a statement 2 weeks later that could be summarized as, yeah. So we're sharing our offering with the NAACP. The yellow card that I received is from Marnie. And Marnie writes, I'm sure many hearts are filled with compassion for the tragic devastation in the greater Los Angeles area. Some of us have family and friends who are dealing with that all firsthand. And may we all hold everyone in our hearts with light and love. I've brought an illustrated map today that may give you a more clear idea of the lay of the land regarding the amazing topography of and the beauty of the Los Angeles area. And I'll have it at social hour downstairs after the service. And so you can talk to Marnie. Thank you, Marnie. To remind, every news item has connections to other stories, and those stories are connected to our community. Jake Lovin also writes one, that on Friday the 10th, I made the call and a sad goodbye to my best friend of almost 16 years, my beautiful kitty named Moondust. Moving forward, I will remember her by the joyous moments we had together. They were wonderful memories and time well spent with her. Jake had such a bond with Moondust, he taught her how to play patty cake. That's great. In our time of meditation, think about the stories that you've heard this week. Stories of concern, stories of loss, stories of laughter, stories of love. And now a story from Irina, one from the play, The World Behind Our World, an excerpt presented by Becky Strum and Irina Morgan. A little backstory. The main character, Jennifer, is a ghost. Because she is a ghost, no one can fully recognize her. Not even her own mother. played by Becky. Well, suddenly, Jennifer is in front of a statue of Philo Farnsworth. She looks at it for a moment and then notices another person who is looking at it too. It's her mother. She takes her ghost sheet off.
Mother? Mother? My mother?
Oh, hello. There's something so familiar about you. I know. Are you a famous ice skater?
I'm not.
Oh, for some reason, I just want to imagine you all dressed up in a sparkly costume. Not sure why. Sorry. I guess that's a weird thing to say to a stranger. This has been a really challenging time in my life.
Me too.
Well, that's it then. I could just tell you were another struggling soul in the world. Do you go to monuments a lot?
What?
Monuments. Like this one. This is Philo Farnsworth. He invented the TV. I've been going to a lot of monuments lately. I don't know, something about believing that people will remember us after we're gone is comforting. But of course, most of us didn't invent anything, let alone something as popular as the television.
Yeah.
You know, he actually regretted it, Philo did. Thought it fried people's brains.
Oh?
But then it says he did agree it was pretty cool how we all got to watch the moon watch together sitting in our living rooms back in '69.
I didn't see that one.
Well, there's so much on these days. Hard to keep up with it all.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Someone can just have an idea and make something, and then our whole world gets restructured around it. Some things make sense, like lamps. But TVs, I don't know. What if someone invented something else? Something that made you have to tell your own story instead of listening to somebody else's. Now that would have been a great invention.
You're right.
Sorry. You're just so easy to talk to. I bet you get that a lot.
Well, I never got a statue.
You're funny. It feels good to laugh.
I didn't hear you laugh.
Well, it feels good to consider laughing.
It does.
Okay. I'll leave you to it. I'm sure you have your own personal matters for visiting the monument of this American icon. Have a great day.
Wait.
Jennifer puts out her hand. Her mother shakes it. There's something kind of a bond or connection that passes through them on the handshake. Something like unconditional love, and it lingers.
Well, you have a good day.
Mother leaves. Jennifer looks around. She isn't sure where to go. She gets down on her knees in front of the monument and starts to pray.
Philo, did you become a ghost when you died? Were you afraid? Did you really think your invention was a mistake? Are you full of regret or just a little? Was the TV your greatest dream? Or was there something else? Something else you wanted?
The wind blows and the scene ends.
Thank you for doing that. That was fun to hear. And it ties into today's theme about the power of story. So thank you. So about 10 years ago, I was watching a movie in a movie theater, and I found myself suddenly overcome by emotion, just sobbing and unable to control the tears that the film brought up in me. I'm sure you're picturing that I was watching some kind of Oscar-winning drama with poetic lines and flawless acting. But in fact, the movie in question was The Girl Ghostbusters, which came out in 2016, with Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig. This movie was more of a comedy than a drama, and it did not get a lot of critical acclaim. Now, for a moment, while bawling, I wondered if maybe I was hormonal or something, but I realized rather quickly upon contemplation why I was having this response. As a child of the 90s, I grew up wanting to be a Jedi, a Lost Boy, a member of the Lord of the Rings Fellowship, or a Ghostbuster. But there were no examples of women in these roles. The women that were there were usually secondary characters or strongly sexualized, if not both. This was my first time seeing women as the heroes of their own story, and I'm sure many women from many ages can relate to this response. There were plenty of examples of little girls being brave and clever. Matilda was my favorite. But there were no examples of grown women. Once Matilda grew up, I had to assume she was also viewed not by the incredible power of her brain, but perhaps by her looks and family standing, which is a terrible thought to consider. I've been told crying in a theater is a fairly common response to seeing yourself recognized in the media for the first time. I have spoken to Asian women who cried during Crazy Rich Asians, a movie seeing themselves in a rom-com. And there was a viral clip going around last year of young black girls tearing up seeing the new Little Mermaid trailer with the black protagonist. It seems these emotions arise when people receive something they didn't know they needed until they experienced it. As a writer myself, a playwright mostly, as you saw, I often sit alone wondering if the work I'm doing has any merit at all. What is the point of art when faced with injustice? What can art do against violence, hunger, poverty, and pain? Sometimes it feels lonely or, in the worst cases, even selfish. But here's what I like to remind myself and the other creators out there. Art matters. Stories matter. In fact, they matter so much, it's kind of embarrassing for humanity. So what do I mean by that? I mean that human beings who have evolved these incredible brains and problem-solving skills should be able to withstand the power of art. But we can't. We are so deeply moved that it can truly change the course of our lives. How many of us have been moved to tears in this very room simply by a song? My guess is most of us. It's common for media to subtly shift cultural norms. I Love Lucy changed the stereotype of the housewife. The show Will and Grace, with openly gay leading characters, helped to destigmatize gay culture. Even in the 1850s, novels such as Harriet Beecher Stowe's book Uncle Tom's Cabin shifted the public stereotypes of Black people and created more abolitionists. Media has influenced the way we view race, gender, and even body image. We usually can't see how art directly affects policy, but in 1983, the movie The Day After, which was about nuclear war, was credited with Reagan deciding to de-escalate the arms race with the Soviet Union. The media influences how we see each other and also, on a deeper level, how we see ourselves. So many of us walk through the world feeling unseen, not just by the culture at large, but by our neighbors, our friends, and even on some level ourselves. Movies and media are the macro example of these stories we tell, but the micro can be just as powerful. Conversations you have with friends and coworkers can have profound changes on the way we view our lives. This is why it is important for people to gather in intimate groups to share their stories. It is the foundation of spiritual healing. AA groups, veterans groups, grief groups, etc. Both the listening to and the sharing of these personal narratives are the foundation of many types of healing. As the famous social worker Brené Brown says, when we deny our stories and disengage from tough emotions, they don't go away. Instead, they define us. Our job is not to deny the story, but to defy the ending, to rise strong, recognize our story, and rumble with the truth until we get to a place where we think, yes, this is what happened. This is my truth, and I will choose how this story ends. Sharing your unique viewpoint can have ripple effects that can spread far beyond what we might imagine. I have recently become interested in ministry because of this truth. It was here in this church, as well as at the UU Church in Rutland, where I work, where I saw the impact from the talks ministers can have on their congregation. And I'm grateful to CVUUS for helping me explore this path to see if it is something I want to dig deeper into in the future. A chance to share stories and ideas in a more spiritual light. On an even more micro level, sometimes a single word can have a profound impact. Have you ever been struck by hearing someone say a word you had never heard before and really realizing it was a word you had been searching for to describe yourself? Some people have acknowledged this feeling when they first heard the word non-binary, for example. The word gave them the language with which to identify an aspect of themselves they didn't know how to properly claim. That is the power of language, story, and words. Again, it's usually not something we realize we are looking for until it is found. I felt this way the first time I heard a woman describe her religion as multi-faith. I think I gasped out loud. This was the word I had been searching for, a way to describe myself as a person who felt connected to all forms of spirituality, which is probably why I landed in the UU sect. Claiming our stories is how we claim ourselves. Media gives us the permission to do this, permission to see ourselves in a new light as the hero. But it's a permission we should have never had to ask for in the first place, because we are the caretakers of our own lives' story. As Joan Didion famously said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And it's worth pausing to ask, are the stories you are telling yourself nourishing you? Are they brave? Are they generous? Do they allow for change, for growth, for breaking and remaking of the self? If not, let them go and rewrite them. You are the author, after all. Lately, as I look forward to this new year, I've felt very anxious, as I'm sure some of you have also felt. Where will we be in a year, as a world and as a country? I wish someone could tell me the ending to this story, or what actions I would need to do to make it a happier tale. Yet, I believe more than ever, due to the increasing speed of the world we live in, we might be able to alter the story, maybe more than ever before. So envision the types of endings you want for yourself, your families, and your communities. Share your stories in ways that feel compelling and true to you, and have the courage to rewrite your endings. Lately, I've noticed a startling new trend that I also am guilty of being a part of, and that is the refusal to talk and listen to our neighbors. As a recovering people pleaser, I often shy away from conflict. I do not listen to or engage with people, often whose opinions are different from mine. I refuse to hear their story or share mine. Political conversations can often become fights and debates, getting so easily heated. I think this is the narrative we've come to expect with politics. But what if, and I'm just spitballing here, we let people tell their stories, listen, and share our own in return? Maybe that view would allow greater dialogue and greater peace. If we viewed the whole story, a holistic form of narrative, instead of political debates, let them be stories. Any good writer knows the key to writing is editing. And I'm talking about creative editing, not grammatical spelling. That has its own place. In fact, whenever I meet a writer who says they don't like to edit, I view that as a red flag. Writing is editing, and I believe humanity is in an editing phase. I've had to edit my own story a few times. Career changes, moving to Vermont from the Midwest, co-parenting my stepdaughter, for example. Edits can be painful, but they usually lead to a more beautiful, more aligned life. I'm sure you all have your own example of edits you've made, changes to your story. Maybe seeing others change their story has helped inspire you to change yours. Another reason why we shouldn't hide our narratives from each other. I know when I see someone do something I want to do, I view that as an opportunity for an edit or a side quest in my own narrative. A good way to reframe envy or jealousy is to view it as an opportunity to edit your own story. In the play segment I shared with you all today, the characters talk about how everything starts out as an idea. Our whole world and the structures we live in were nothing more than pictures in someone's head. Now is the time for us to create new ideas, new pictures, and new stories, and be brave enough to share them with those who might criticize us. It's a difficult task, but it's one that we as UUs align with through our principles of social justice and community. I'll end with this passage by the writer and activist Adrienne Marie Brown. She says, "This is the most exciting thing right now. If we wake up, we are in a place where we can create so much history and so much change. Everything is falling apart, but also new things are possible. And Octavia said, there's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns. We are in a time of new suns. We have no idea what could be. So it's time to change, and we can be mindful about that. We are the action heroes. Once you wake up and recognize, oh, I can shape everything. I don't have to be a victim of someone else's vision for my subjugation. I can actually be a powerhouse in the story of my own life and my people's lives. That's a different invitation, and I'd much rather live in that scenario. And so I do. So share your art and share your story. Thank you.
So before we sing this hymn, we're going to sit at the welcome table. The first time I heard it was in the Reformed Church. It was about getting ready for communion, the welcome table. And we were very deliberate about making sure everybody felt welcome to that table. But that's communion, which is related to community. And community is formed by listening to each other's stories and making space at that table for stories that might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. That's, for me, how I've been growing spiritually this year, of listening to the stories of others, surprising stories, personal stories, stories that have enriched my life. And I'm so glad that they are welcomed here at our welcome table.
Sing
have a final poem for you all. How to Write by Anne Waldman. Perhaps I'm kidding myself about the life I lead. Sometimes I feel I'm dying, like a lot of the things I see around me. Then I turn on the TV and understand that everything must still be moving, music, for example, and I rush outside, around the corner to a concert. It's so easy. Everything accessible from where I happen to live at the moment. Things like rock concerts, not too many trees on 2nd Avenue. Once on the 6th Avenue bus, I got the sudden sensation I had been alive before, that I was a man at some other time traveling. You would think this strange if you were a woman. If I were a man right now, I'd be getting out of the draft, but I think I'd want to be a poet too, which simply means alive, awake, and digging everything, even that which makes me sick and want to die. I don't really, you know. I just don't want to be conscious sometimes, because when you're conscious in the ordinary way, you have to think about yourself a lot. Dull thoughts like, what am I doing? Uptown in a large crowd, I want to sit down and cry because everything is so simple and complicated all at once. Everyone has this feeling, even people downtown. It is very basic the way we are, which is why I can say we. A lot of drugs can change you if you want, because you too are what drugs are made of. In fact, you are just a bundle of drugs when you come right down to it. I don't want to get into it, but you'll see what I mean when you catch on. That's not meant to sound snotty. I'm open to whatever comes along. This is the feeling I get before I take a plane, then everything's the same afterward anyway. All into one space, and here I am again, alive still. Same worries on my mind. The thing is, don't worry. You are doing what you have to, what you can. You hear from your friends. They let you know what's happening in California, Iowa, Vermont, and other places around the globe. They take you out of your little rooms, just like the newspaper or the news or the man you live with, and put you in a much larger room, one in which you are in constant motion around the clock.
Thank you, Karina. It has been a privilege to have you here. Thank you. And for all the stories and the invitation to listen to each other's stories. So you can do that best downstairs after the postlude with a cup of coffee, listen to each other's stories. Before we get there, there is an invitation if you'd like to help out by stacking chairs and moving to the side, because tomorrow there's going to be a blood drive in the sanctuary. Will you join me in our closing by reading the extinguishing flame?